Welcome back to the Six Steel City Rings podcast. My name is Ray Whiting, and with me I have Miss Leanne Lohman and Mr. Bob Quinn, both senior staff writers for Steel Nation. Guys, how you all doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It seems like it's been a long time since we have done our last episode. Well, it was just a few days ago.
I. It's been a weird, quiet week. Like, haven't you been like on the edge of your seat waiting for like big news, and then there really just hasn't been any.
Yeah. I think as we're nearing the draft. More, little tidbits are coming out more and more. So again, it's going to get interesting come the last weekend of April. And we
Yeah.
shall see. Guys, let's get to work. In the latest in Steelerland, the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed Cordarelle Patterson, longtime running back out of Baylor. I'm sure that Steelers will sign him as a kickoff specialist. And what I thought was an interesting move was, the NFL just changed their kickoff rule. And it looks like the kickoff team has to line up on the 35, and the receiving, their front line has to line up on the 40. And it's kind of like the same setup, like I think the UFL, something like that. So you have all the
XFL.
space, and so, and I thought, okay, the league passed the rule on at this particular time. Hours later, they signed Cordarelle Patterson. Now, let me tell you something. Again, I'm in West Virginia, and I remember when Baylor played West Virginia here, it was a 70-63 game. And Cordarelle Patterson, I mean, he was playing lights out. And I always knew that he would do well in the NFL.
Yeah.
There'll be some moments in his career that will be kind of sleeper moments, but overall he has had a good career, and so I think this will be a plus on behalf of the special teams for the Steelers, because again the special teams for us has been down for quite some time. What are your thoughts on the new kickoff rule and the signing of Cordarelle Patterson?
I think it brings him back together with a coach that he already knows. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that he was with Arthur Smith and they know each other makes me think that he has, I can't remember exactly how old he is, but, not 23. So it makes me think that he has something left in the tank to give. Do you know what I mean? I think that he also gives us, maybe this is just wishful thinking on my part, but I like that he's kind of a gadgety guy that does a lot of different stuff. And so I miss the old days where we used to run the kind of gadget plays. And I hope that he gives us some opportunity to maybe every once in a while do a little bit of razzle dazzle on offense when we need it. As for the new kickoff rule, I'm really mostly bummed that there won't be any more onside kicks. I mean, they're exciting. They don't happen very often. I know they rarely work, but every once in a while they do, and they're like crazy exciting.
Well, I think with the new rule, you're allowed to announce the onside kick. Like you could still
right.
do
No more
because they
surprises.
didn't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
No more surprise onside kicks.
Right.
I mean,
But
if you're going to go with the XFL rule, I don't know
yeah,
why you don't go all the way and go with the 4th and 15.
I agree. I agree. It seemed to me like a partial. And the thing about the surprise onside kick is that it was almost always a surprise. I mean, unless you were in the rare chance where like you knew they had to make that kick to be able to possibly do something. A lot of times they were a surprise. A lot of time they go up and the announcers would be one, is it going to be an onside kick? Is it not going to be one? Do you know what I mean? So there were a lot of surprise ones. So to me, taking away that element really does kind of hurt teams' opportunities to be able to make that work when they do it. And I agree with you. I think if you're going to go to the XFL route, then just go all the way there.
When I look at the situation of this rule, and you hear about, well, the owners are looking at safety, for the players, I still call BS on it because,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're all about safety, then okay, let's go back to 16 games. If you're all about safety, let's change some more rules because again, let's go to all grass. You know, let's go to all grass. You know, every stadium. But
Right.
you know, it's all about making a buck to the owners, so we all know that. And most of all, again, is I think it's hypocritical. I mean, somebody's gonna get hurt. The game is a lot faster, more powerful. You know, you've heard players have testified as far as the speed of these players and how they train. You know,
Right.
Michael Vick once said, you know, I thought I was the fastest person in the NFL. You know, I got linebackers running as fast as I can. So, like I said, you take speed, you know, along with the brawn strength of a player. Let's say, for example, James Harrison. You know, now think of
You
him.
could argue it was undersized.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know, and think of. I mean, look at him running full speed trying to knock somebody out. It's going to happen. And so, and that's why I don't understand the hypocrisy of, oh, we want the safety for the players. Oh, no, we don't want them hurt. Guys, come on, it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, the, there's some positives to the new kickoff rule. First of all, if you watched a lot of the XFL, it does generate more returns. So of course, they also
Yes.
had the rule where if you kicked it into the end zone, you got to start at the 35, not the 25. So
Right.
I don't think the NFL is doing that. I could be wrong. I think it's
I think they're
you
starting
can
at the
still,
25.
yeah, you could still kick it through the end zone, which it should be told as far as the kickoff goes, as long as you're letting a guy like Justin Tucker or Boz or most of the really good NFL kickers kick it from the 30, 35, they're going to get it out of the end zone. I mean, this new rule isn't going to change a lot.
Right.
If it was a situation where, okay, now we're going to penalize you 10 yards for kicking it into the end zone to generate the returns like the XFL, I don't think they're quite willing to go there. It makes it a more exciting play. You know, let's face it, Cordarelle Patterson, he has the most touchdown returns, kickoff touchdown returns in the history of the NFL. He has more than Devin Hester, who's now in the Hall of Fame. So bringing in a guy like Patterson for that kind of play and those kind of opportunities, yeah, all they've got to do is really break one line of containment, and some of these guys are going to be gone. I really think Calvin Austin's speed would be more beneficial than Cordarelle Patterson, other than the fact that he's 33 years old. He's not what he once was. He's still a very good player, but yes, you're bringing him specifically for the kickoff return, but I don't know how much he has left in the tank to just break one line and be gone. I think if he does break one line, he's still got the speed to be gone, but I would want like a Calvin Austin or the guy from Texas coming out, Xavier Worthy, who ran the fastest 40 ever. I would think that would be more advantageous for those guys.
Yeah.
I understand it's about safety. It's not about safety. Cutting back the schedule, that's never going to happen. They're just going to keep giving away preseason games and adding regular season games. I mean, the grass is kind of made the point on our last podcast. The grass is a huge issue. It should be mandated. It is in soccer in Europe.
Yeah.
They only play on grass fields. I think it's the Premier League is the top league over there. Or, they can call it football all they want. It's soccer to me. But the NFL could do other things too. If you watch training camp, every NFL team plays with the caps on top of the helmets. The helmets can be safer.
Yeah.
You can't put a shiny logo on the cap. And so when the NFL says, oh, geez, we want the cap, we want to be safe. Okay, well, then mandate the caps. Okay, that's going to do more to promote player safety and stop injuries than anything else.
Yeah.
The concussions protocol is nice, but how about we actually protect the players against concussions? It drives me up the wall whenever they say player safety, because they truly don't mean it. And it's only selective player safety. If a star gets hurt, they're going to change the rules. I don't want them to change any more rules. I think the kickoff rule could be exciting if they added it in, but the surprise onside kick, they said there was only two, but you can make
Yeah,
an argument that the New Orleans Saints don't win the Super Bowl without the surprise onside kick in
right.
the second.
They have a time
I
and a
mean,
place, and then, and you know what I mean, and where they're useful.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, when it comes to safety, guys, I mean, really, it's hard to play through a season injury free. It's hard.
Yeah,
And let's face it, playing football is mental in every shape form. It's mental. When I play football, I was programmed. You know, again, if as a receiver, if you catch the ball, I mean, if your hands touch the ball, you have to catch it. Defense and everything. I mean, you want. They're a good hit. I mean, to knock them out, you want to inflict pain, and that's. I mean, that's just being programmed from little league all the way up to the pros, and
yeah,
that's how it is. So you really
well,
can't say safety in the realm of football. I mean, you can, but it's a dicey situation.
well,
yeah,
I coached 10, 11, 12-year-old football for a while, and I will say this: I wouldn't do it today. I did it back in the early 2000s, and there were things that we were teaching as far as things that we knew coming up would work, but were effective methods of tackling without leading with your head. Keep your face up, put the shoulder pads into them, drive through your tackle. And with this, like the hip drop tackle rule, well, now they're saying, well, they could just drive through the tackles. Well, everybody who says that never actually tried to
right.
catch
Never
somebody
did
from
it.
behind.
Yeah,
Okay. If you're running, if you got at the angle and you're cutting a guy off who's 3 times faster than you and you got one shot and you dive at him, then okay, great. You're going to do whatever you have to do to get him on the ground. But I mean, I think I forget who said it, but you're going to turn it into guys just have to dive at players' feet and hope they trip. And if you do that, I got news for you. You're going to have a lot more injuries to the lower leg.
yeah,
It's not making the game safer by saying, okay, well, this tackle that happens once a game, we're going to outlaw it. Okay, well, if it happens once a game, we don't need to outlaw it. Okay, I'm sorry that the injuries are a little bit higher, but the reality is, and I've heard this point made many times, and we made it the other day, officials will not. This is a judgment call.
Yes,
Officials
it is.
won't get
Yes.
this right.
no,
And
it'll be a
we'll
mess.
have 3 penalties for every one where we go, that shouldn't have been a penalty.
Right. I read something interesting earlier today. It was in something that Tunch had written about his time playing for the Steelers. And I thought this was really interesting. And I was hoping we were going to talk about safety a little bit. He said, and look, I don't want to get into like I'm not trying to like promote like the old school, man, football is not what it used to be. But he said that the reason that they didn't have the injuries back then that they have now, he said, like, you never heard of people tearing their ACLs. And he said, because we put on pads and we went out and we hit, he said, we were doing with Chuck Noll 2-a-days in pads in the heat. Do you know what I mean? He said, we practiced tackling each other. He said, we didn't stop with that during the season. We still practiced that way, hard and physical. And he said, and while Cowher wasn't as physical as Noll was, he said they still retained this level of physicality until the league kind of took that away. Do you know what I mean? And he said, and then as they've backed off of having these very physical practices, he said, guys don't learn how to tackle. That's not something you have time to teach somebody, how to do a tackle or a new tackle. But he said, so as those things have backed off that practice and these guys aren't, he said, getting hit all the time. He said, I'm sorry, but it just toughens you up. And he said, your body learns to take those hits and you just don't get injured as much. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know, scientifically how true it is, but it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
It
I
does,
think
yeah.
it's across all sports. Like, just a switch, opening day was yesterday for baseball. You know, look
Right.
at pitchers. It used to be they'd throw 300 innings and complete games left and right. Now,
Right.
if they go 5 innings, they're heroes. I mean, the
Yes.
game has across all sports has changed. That's why it drives me up the wall when younger people say, "Oh, the modern athlete." Yeah, they're bigger and stronger and faster, but they sure ain't tougher.
No.
I'll take my guys who will pop you in the mouth. You can outrun them in the first quarter, but by the fourth quarter, you're going to get worn down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
these guys playing against, like Mel Blount, the Mel Blount rule. Oh, Mel Blount wouldn't be the same player with well, he was the same player when they changed the rule.
Yeah.
Would they have, would he be the same player today when now you can't even really touch him within 5 yards? I mean, Blount would have, like he did when they put the rule in, he exploited that 5 yards. But
Mhm.
now a guy like Blount, oh, defensive holding, whatever. Hey, I'm within 5 yards. I can do whatever I want. But people forget Mel Blount was 6'3". He ran a 4.40 in 1970.
Yeah.
Imagine what he would do with modern training.
Right.
Roethlisberger made the point he'd probably be a linebacker at this point, because of his size and his speed. But don't think he couldn't play corner today. Don't think Rod Woodson couldn't come
Right.
out and play corner and be physical today. And if you take some of the old-time Steelers in their prime who were big-time hitters, first of all, they all get thrown out of the league within 2 games because the league wouldn't know what to do
Yeah.
with it. I mean, think about a guy like Lambert. I mean, people forget Lambert. He was tall, but for a linebacker in the 70s, he was undersized. He was 230.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he was fast, but he was one of the toughest, hardest hitters in football, one of the scariest guys. But if you look at, where he really did damage, aside from being physical in the run game, he was a great coverage linebacker. He had a lot of interceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole, players are bigger, stronger, faster, and all that stuff today. I don't buy any of those arguments, because if you're going to make the argument that the modern athlete is bigger, stronger, faster, then you have to give credit to the old guy who's going to have the modern training and adjust his game too.
Well,
Right.
but Bob, now again, the way the rules have changed is geared towards offense. It is a quarterback-driven league. You go back in the 90s, with Emmitt Smith, the 90s and 2000s, Emmitt Smith, Jerome Bettis, for a short period of time, Lawrence Phillips, power running backs. And so the running game was top back then. Now it's quarterback driven. So yes, the rules have changed. And again, and we talked about this in the last episode, how they protect the quarterback where you can't hit him too high, you can't hit him too low, you can't force all your weight on him, and so it's to me, it's so set up to where they cannot be touched. I get it, but now, like I said, bigger, stronger, faster. The game's more modern.
Well, that's what makes TJ so special. TJ Watt. He rarely gets a roughing the passer penalty, and I've seen him talk about this in interviews. And JJ, his brother, has talked about it some on the CBS and Pat McAfee. Is they really, there's no more. I drive through the quarterback. It doesn't matter how legal, where I hit him. I could hit him perfectly in his waist. And we learned from the Steelers, Lamar Jackson a couple years ago, hit him in his waist, wrapped him up.
Yeah.
Didn't even land on him. They called it roughing the passer.
Yeah.
TJ tackles the ball. He talks about it. Here's what I can do is I can tackle the ball and I can tackle the quarterback's arm. And that keeps him away from, there is some risk, that if you miss, you could hit the quarterback in the head. I get it, but TJ doesn't. I mean, at best, I can only recall maybe once or twice in the last 2 or 3 years where he's gotten called for something. Highsmith is good at it too. But you go back, to a guy like Harrison or, the scariest Steeler, as far as I'm concerned, to ever put on a uniform was Greg Lloyd. And Lloyd wanted to hurt you. I mean, he makes no secret about it. When he does interviews now, Lloyd wanted to hit you so hard that you walked over to the sideline and said, "Don't ever run that play again."
Yeah.
And
Harrison got screwed a little bit because he came right really at the cusp of that change happening. Do you know what I mean? He was in the beginning when he was learning, when he first came into the NFL, what he did was praised and applauded. I know that, you know, in the public eye, there was some, you know, people who thought he was like a villain, but for NFL purposes, he was fine. And then, you know, the game changed while he was there in multiple times, and he became this villain where, you know, it felt like everything he did was just automatically going to be a penalty.
Yeah, I know he almost retired over it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
when
I
it
remember.
when it was really bad, then they were fining him. You know, I think he got $225,000
Yeah.
total in his career, but I want to say 150 of that was like 2010, 2011. I think
Easy.
it was the last Super Bowl year.
Yeah.
And the year he knocked out Muhammad Massaquoi, which is one of my all-time favorite Steeler quotes. You know,
Yeah.
when he was asked about it on the Ben podcast, he's like, "Hey, what do you think? You know, what did you think about getting fined for the Muhammad Massaquoi hit?" And he was like, "If I knew I was going to get fined, I would have got my money's worth."
Right.
Yeah, I remember
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
He's
going,
another one though that said, you know, his goal was to hurt you, not permanently. You know what I mean? He wasn't trying to end your career, but he definitely wanted to end your game.
mhm. You know, my famous quote from Greg Lloyd was after the 1995 AFC title game when they beat the Colts, and Greg Gumbel interviewed Greg Lloyd, and Greg Lloyd, you know, he was just being himself, and you know, he was talking about how good the team was, blah blah blah. No, let's go win the effing game on live TV, and it just stumbled Greg Gumbel. If you can watch the video on YouTube and just look at it again, you'll say, "Wow,
Yeah.
that was Greg Lloyd." You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, Lloyd is also one of the last great Steelers who is
Yeah.
an HBCU player.
Yes.
You know, the story goes that, you know, he wasn't invited to the combine, and Donahue, of all people, showed up at his dorm room in the rain right after Thanksgiving and said, "Hey, I want you to come out and run a 40." And, you know, the coach told him, "Hey, look, you know, this might be the only chance you get. Go out there and do it and see what happens." And he ran in sneakers on grass.
Yeah.
And Donahue timed him and turned around and said, "Hey, has anybody else had, you know, come out here and had you run?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Good." And you know, they just kind of let it lay low under the radar. One of the last HBCU guys who
Yeah.
kind of went under the radar until he got drafted. And
Mhm.
once he got into camp, he was part of, you know, outside of the 74 draft, which is the greatest draft in NFL
Right.
history. 1987 draft was pretty phenomenal.
Mhm.
Rod Woodson, Greg Lloyd,
Yeah,
Merrill
that was a good
Hodge.
one.
I mean, there were some real good players taken in that draft, and Lloyd was one of them. For my money, yeah, I know he only had a 5-year prime, but he had a devastating knee injury. He
Yeah.
was never the same. But if you watch football in the early 90s, Greg Lloyd was the best defensive player in the NFL, period. And
By
he should be in
far.
the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, by far. Should definitely be in the Hall of Fame.
And
So
then
since we're talking about the Steelers players and their loyalty, recently, it was several months ago, we saw it come out that the NFLPA had put out their survey and the Steelers performed terribly. They were like F's across the board, except for Mike Tomlin, who was an A, but everything else, you know, treatment of families, locker room, facilities, all of those things, ownership, all performed really poorly. So saw recently that Rooney spoke out against that and kind of shot it down, that it was a gimmick on behalf of the NFLPA. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything. He doesn't pay attention to it. He listens to what his players tell him. I was curious what you guys thought about that.
what I thought, Bob and Leanne, I felt that, well, Arboni said, you know, it's more a media thing. But you know, I kind of questioned that when I saw that, when I saw the grades, because I'm thinking, you know, when you're in Pittsburgh, you play for the Steelers, it's royalty, and they treat you, you know, like a king, past or present. And I'm thinking to myself, to get grades like this, I mean, does that really mean something? But then on the other hand, you know, are the Is the facility, is it upkept? I mean, is it up to building code? And again, I've been in the locker room once,
Yeah,
and that was when they first opened the stadium. How does it look now? I don't know.
they're in trouble because they share
Probably
with
the
Pitt.
same.
Huh? Yeah, it
Probably
was
the same, and that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But if you compare it to what like colleges have, like the University of Alabama's locker room is like amazing, like mind blowing. Do you know what I mean? Compared to what, the Steelers look like they're in a high school locker room compared to that. And I don't know what you do about that when you're sharing space with Pitt. So you are in the city, so you're limited. You can't expand out. Do you know what I mean? And then the extra rooms that you have that you could take, you're sharing with Pitt. I say
Absolutely.
Pitt. That would be my solution.
I wrote an article on this yesterday because Mike Florio, he has an axe to grind on Art Rooney II.
Yeah.
Anytime Art does something, he's
He has
highly
something to
critical.
say.
So he talked about, okay, so what if it's a media stunt? And I think Art's point wasn't so much that it doesn't mean anything because they don't, it's a media stunt. The second part of that is he's like, it's not presented as constructive criticism. It isn't, hey, this is what's wrong and this is what you can do better. And I think Art genuinely has an interest in solving a problem, but he doesn't know what the problem is.
Yeah.
Treatment of families, F-. Well, the Steelers don't have Caboli made this point. The Steelers don't have many players who have kids. And if Cam Hayward, who came out vehemently and said, this is ridiculous, no, absolutely not. And Caboli joked that, maybe this was just somebody's brother had to pay for a ticket and they were used to in other organizations not having to pay for a ticket.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as that.
Or the seats
Great.
weren't as good as they were somewhere else. Somewhere else they got club seats or, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Great point.
Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, here's the one thing that and I specified this yesterday. So Tomlin got an A. The next highest grade was for the cafeteria and the food, which means obviously the cooks pairing the food, who don't get paid like an NFL player, are doing a phenomenal job. It's good to see. It's not an A, but it was the next best grade.
Yeah.
Well, the nutritionist and dietitian got a D. So you like how the food is cooked, but you just don't want that food to be on the menu? I mean, it doesn't make
It does feel very subjective. It does feel very subjective because my thought was, are they mad that they're not planning like diets with the players, like specific for their needs? Like, is that what the players are mad about? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And let's face it, Art Rooney was the 31st ranked owner in the league. You know who's 32nd? Clark Hunt.
Yeah.
Last I checked, 6 straight AFC championship games, 4 Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl titles. Yeah, I certainly hope Art Rooney screws up enough for us to do that.
Right.
Well, I hope that this doesn't deter folks from saying, okay, the Steelers are not, they don't want to pay money. They're like bond building and the Pirates. They don't want to spend any money, blah, yada, yada, yada.
They don't. They're notoriously cheap. It's a family-run operation. The Steelers are known for it. But, hey, did it stop Patrick Queen from signing here? Absolutely not. Did we get him $4 million less than anybody else would have got him?
Okay, so let me ask you, do you feel that, now, of course, as stated before, the quarterback gets the lion's share of the contract? Do you believe Ben forced Art's hand? Well, probably at the time, Dan Rooney. Do you think he,
In
what do you mean by forced his hand?
Well, again, because he had over $100 million contract before he retired. So again, if we don't spend money, if Pittsburgh don't like to spend money, again, at one point, Ben was in top 10 as far as quarterback salary. At one point.
Yeah, but he was probably a top 3 quarterback.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
To me, Ben was underpaid a lot of years that he was in Pittsburgh. Do you know what I mean? He took some team-friendly deals. I felt like he did what he could as opposed to other quarterbacks.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, he wasn't Tom Brady. I
No,
mean, he didn't take, ridiculously below market contracts.
no.
Well,
But Ben,
but,
Ben was a
but
top five, top
wait,
10 quarterback.
Bob, that's a tough comparison about Tom Brady because Tom Brady's wife bringing in 25 million. So it's like,
Yeah, Ben's wife's a doctor.
you know,
She ain't making Giselle money, but
No.
right.
He makes good money. But also Ben doesn't do all of this stuff that Tom Brady does. Do you know what I mean? Tom Brady also is clearly more financially motivated about some of this stuff than Ben is, at least from the outward appearance, because Ben does some promotions and some things like that. But I mean, Tom Brady was on like every commercial in the world, and do you know what I mean? Promoting all kinds of products and then jumping right into doing analyst work. Do you know what I mean? I know Ben probably could have gotten himself on TV if he wanted to. That wasn't what he wanted to do.
I wonder about that because of and we kind of talked about this before. The day he retired, Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, undisputed, they killed him. The first thing they brought up
Yeah,
was,
the old charges.
the sexual assault and the motorcycle accident and all that. So I wonder if he could be. Ben is phenomenal on his podcast. He
He's great.
probably should be talking about, the NFL for somebody, but then again, like to Ray's point, he has over $100 million. Kids are young.
Yeah.
He's repeatedly resisted any overtures to coaching, anything, and I think he's having fun just
Yeah.
occasionally coming on and spouting off. He did his radio show for years while he was a player.
Yep.
Maybe he just got his fill of the public eye, and he knows the longer he goes and the more public it gets. Look at a guy like Eric Bieniemy, from the coaching standpoint. He can't get a job because of things that happened 20, 30 years ago. They were pretty egregious things.
Yeah.
I understand why he didn't, but somebody, if you'll keep him from being a head coach, it could be like the Greg Schiano thing where, if he gets hired, all of a sudden people will come out of the woodwork protesting and they'll turn around and have to get rid of him before he even starts. So I don't even think he wants to put himself
Well, I
through
mean,
that.
I agree with you. He's got young kids too. Do you know what I mean? To me, Ben is like in the best possible situation. You've got fairly young kids. Your career is done. You're retired at a nice young age. You can spend time now. Your wife can focus on her career, whatever, and you can pour this energy into spending time with your kids. I mean, he's always talking about golfing with his son and you know what I mean, his daughter sports and all of these things. So now you've got this time to do something that you didn't have when they were babies. And I think that's what he wants to do. But I think that you come back into the public eye and all of these things every time you come out, these things get dredged up and he knows it. So then you got not that his kids won't ever hear it, but now you've got it coming up all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And people talking about it, like ripping the Band-Aid off over and over again. I don't blame him. He doesn't need to do it. There is no chance I would do it.
What I really don't understand, put Ben aside for a second, is why Hines Ward isn't coaching. I mean, he coached in the UFL as a head coach. He's been an offensive intern. He's been a wide receivers coach. How is it that, I mean, Steelers should have hired him, but how is it that nobody in football has a job for Hines Ward? How is it that
I wonder if
nobody
he doesn't want to move? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has that newer wife. Do you know what I mean? And they live wherever they live, Houston or something, right? And I just wondered if he doesn't want to move. I saw him on some TV show and he is very I was surprised he's a little bit rigid and set in his ways and kind of a really type A
kind of like he was as a
personality.
player?
Yeah, exactly. But you don't expect it like in his house, do you know what I mean? Lining up forks and stuff like that. I forget what show that was. And yeah, he was super rigid and he had this new wife and they were, just got this house and his son. And so I wonder if he's got things going on like that he's just like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm hoping to see. I know Antoine Randall L is turning heads in Detroit.
Yes.
And I think he has a good shot to be an offensive coordinator somewhere.
Yes.
And eventually a head coach. When you've got players, they always talk about, well, why aren't there more minority head coaches? When you've got players like Hines Ward, Antoine Randall L, Rod Woodson, who are willing to do the work and start at the bottom, and then they don't get the opportunity to become a coordinator, It doesn't make any sense. And
I
I
don't
don't,
think we talk about it enough. I said something to somebody the other day about Joe Green coaching with the Steelers, and they had no idea that he had done that.
yeah, he
Yeah.
longtime defensive
I
line
was
coach,
shocked. I
also
was like,
for
how
the
did you
Miami
know that?
Dolphins.
I'm like, he never, like, he's like, he didn't leave. Do you know what I mean? Like, I saw like Joey Porter coach for the Steelers. I was like, how do you not know this?
Well,
And,
guys,
but, you know,
I'll say this. And I don't want to go into the weeds with this. I know you said,
right.
okay, more minority coaches, and that's fine. You can work your way up the ranks, being an assistant here and assistant there, and then you become a coordinator here. And then you say, okay, if I am as successful as the offensive coordinator, I have done this a la Antoine Randall L. Now I'm ready for the head coach position.
Mhm.
And that's where I'm not gonna say it's the glass ceiling, it's the concrete ceiling.
It is.
And it's sad because the guy from I think it's Matt Rule, he came from Baylor and he became the head coach of the Carolina Panthers with no experience. And again, we've heard many stories about why Eric
Well,
Bieniemy hasn't gotten a head coaching job, but we know
well,
why.
Matt Rule isn't the first college coach with no NFL
Mm-mm.
experience
He's
who
Yeah.
not
had
the first,
success, who
right?
got
He's
an
not the
NFL
first.
job.
Yeah. Lots of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, and that's why I don't like Dion's antics most of the time, but I really respect the fact that he wanted to be a head coach. Florida State should have hired him.
Yeah.
So he went to Jackson State to prove himself. And he did. He had success. And now he's gone to Colorado. Was Colorado great last year? No, but were they exciting to watch? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a lot of news. And I think he's in it for the long haul. He's committed to building something
He
there.
got them so much attention that they would have never gotten. Like, people watched those, people were dialed in, people knew about that program. I'm telling you, none of those people ever watched Colorado before that. I mean, he had me watching games. I never watched their games before. He made it exciting.
Leanne,
I will say that we still have people on this planet that still aren't happy with black quarterbacks. And so if we're going to still have that mentality, like it's 1980 where they're not smart enough to lead a team, I don't know how we expect some of these fans to get behind them being offensive coordinators. And, I know that there's a lot of, and I don't want to get bogged down in this, a lot of pushback about the Rooney rule and things like that. But until the league takes a stand where it says, we're not accepting that BS, do you know what I mean? Like, that's not how we're going to live, and helps to dispel some of those stereotypes and racist behavior. I don't know what else you do.
well,
Well,
okay,
go ahead, Ray.
Bob, let me say this. And I've been just ear hustling on conversations about the black quarterback. Okay. Now look at this right here in this year's draft. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, I'm drawing a blank. So
Michael Penix.
Michael Penix Jr. Okay, then 3 right there. Okay. So what I'm saying is, yes, more black quarterbacks are coming out.
Yes.
Okay. So you say, okay, the quarterbacks get a lion's share of the money. So the conversation goes like this. If you recall, Jalen Hurts got a big contract. Lamar Jackson got a big contract. And so the conversation goes, okay, if they don't perform as well, then the conversation goes, well, he got that big contract. It was subpar performance. But then you look at somebody like, say, Joe Burrow, a white quarterback who got the big contract, and maybe they had a subpar performance, but there's no question about that.
Don't hear that.
So, you don't hear that.
Well,
that's the problem. That's the issue.
Burrow really hasn't had a performance before. So let's use your example here. And this is kind of, I don't necessarily think it's outright racist. I think it's part of it is, and it's a good change. Most of the top quarterbacks at this point in the NFL are black. But the game has kind of evolved. So you can kind of make okay, well, now we're emphasizing a mobile quarterback. So we want black quarterbacks. Okay. Lamar Jackson got a big contract because of performance. He was an MVP. Yes, he struggles in the playoffs. but he's heard glorified running back his entire career.
Yes.
Is there some truth to it? There is when he plays the Steelers,
Yeah.
but you'd be a fool not to admit that when he plays everybody else, he takes advantage of his natural gifts.
Right.
Josh Allen
As he
takes
should,
advantage
by
of
the
his
way, as he
national
should.
gifts. Yeah, as he should. Josh Allen takes advantage of his natural gifts. Does Josh Allen run way too much? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If Josh Allen was Lamar Jackson, there'd be talk about, maybe benching him because he turned the ball over so much. Jalen Hurts is in.
And guys, I'm going to say this right here, and when we look at what's going on in today's society with conversations of DEI and stuff like that, race and everything, it kind of filters into the realm of football. It does, and I'm sorry, I mean, which is sad, it's kind of like oil and water. It doesn't mix. You can't mix the two. Let's separate the two. However, I mean, it's guys. I mean, this topic right here we're talking about right now. Oh, we can keep going until the sun comes up
For
next
months.
month.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, there has to be a medium. It has to be. And, how you gonna solve the problem? Don't know.
Well, I think for quarterbacks, it's really starting to evolve, and it has evolved because Lamar Jackson got paid on performance. Patrick Mahomes got paid on performance. Jalen Hurts got paid on potential.
Yeah.
Yes, he got to the Super Bowl and they gave him a big contract, but let's face it, that's really his first big year. And guys forever have been getting paid on potential. Sam Bradford, Kirk Cousins. I mean, well, maybe not for potential, but assuring for winning playoff games.
Two chains. Yeah.
And now for the first time, I look at a guy like Jalen Hurts. It's not so much what he's done; it's what they think he's going to do.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson, probably the biggest mistake in NFL history to give him that contract. I think Cleveland's going to pay for it for the next couple of years. But again, that's Deshaun Watson's kind of a unique situation because of the legal issues, and he hasn't played very well. Russell Wilson got a huge contract from Denver because of what he was, not what he is. I don't think, but they moved on very quickly. They're paying a lot of ridiculous money of his salary. And I think as you get more and more, let's face it, the NFL doesn't it's a crapshoot with quarterbacks. And the more and more you take Deion's kid when he comes in the league, he's going to get paid a lot of money. He's going to get a lot of endorsement money. If he's any good, he'll get a huge contract.
Making a ton of money.
Yeah. If he's any good, he'll get a huge contract. If he doesn't, he'll be just like all the other quarterbacks who bust out. So I think we're getting closer, not colorblind, but where we can kind of take the racist element out of the quarterbacks. The coaching, on the other hand,
that's a different story.
I hate to say racism. They always say it's the guy they're comfortable with. We all know what that means.
Right.
I mean,
Come on now, please.
It's ridiculous.
You're right, Bob. And something major is going to happen before, there will be a come to Jesus moment in the NFL. Something major is going to happen. It's coming. And again, there's no way of getting around it. The salary cap goes up every year.
Yeah.
So, when it goes up every year, you got players want more money.
Absolutely. This is why I think a guy like Randall L is so important because he's a guy who went to the bottom, started at the bottom, and the league has had this intern program forever for minority coaches. Very few of them have come out of it and become significant coordinators. Randall L has real coaching talent. You can see it with what he's done with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Josh Reynolds just got a big contract. I think that we're going to see good things from Jamison Williams, 2 years removed from the ACL injury. He has talent, and guys are committing to starting at the bottom.
Yes.
When we use Bieniemy as an example of, he started at the bottom and now he can't go up any further.
Yeah, he has some other factors.
There's more to Bieniemy than that. It's that criminal stuff from the past.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's
Could it be held
unfortunate.
against
It's
him
going to
30
haunt
years
you.
later? I don't know.
Yeah. But I think too that I think what it's a lot of non-football people or people who don't really like intimately spend a lot of time around football realizes that just because somebody was a good player doesn't mean that they're cut out to be a good coach. And like that came up
Right.
a lot in my mentions, like about Ben Roethlisberger, where Ben just needs to come and be the offensive coordinator at Pittsburgh. Like, we don't have any idea if Ben's a good coach. Like, we have no idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, do we know that Ben was a good quarterback? Yes, but that's not the same skill. Like one thing, people have said that about Tom Brady. You know what I mean? He's gonna be a head coach and make millions. Well, he's already made millions, and just because he was a great quarterback doesn't make him a great coach. Like there's more to being a coach than that. You know what I mean? It's for one thing, it's not just your one position necessarily. You're talking about Ben being the OC. That's the whole offense. It's yeah, people are ridiculous.
Well, it all boils down to the owners.
Yeah.
So.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks, I don't know if you guys heard, but Justin Fields has allegedly picked a number, and depending on who you believe, it's either number 5 or what came out today, number 2. So, what do we think about him not getting to wear number 1?
I think of Gary Anderson. I think of number 1.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's concrete in stone. I'm sorry. You don't know. That's Gary Anderson. That's his number. I'm sorry. I would say, the number 2 jersey, I think Mason Rudolph solidified his small legacy wearing 2. And of course, before that, we look at Brian St. Pierre, which was, he held a clipboard. Number 5, Josh Dobbs. I believe, he can create his own legacy if he would wear number 5.
I don't really have a preference whether he's 5 or 2. I understand what you're saying about Mason. I just don't care that much. I do feel some type of way about number 1, and not just because of Gary Anderson, all that. That's a great point. But I think there's something very me about the number 1 that I don't like when you're talking about somebody who's a teammate. Do you know what I mean? That starts in high school because you're the big guy on campus, and you know what I mean? So you're going to wear number 1. And I just think that always, to me, it feels like an ego thing and not like a team thing. So maybe that's a little old fashioned, but it's how it makes me feel.
Leanne, you brought up a good point. To me, to wear the number 1 football jersey, to me, is equivalent to wearing number 23 on the basketball team.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn if it's b-ball, middle school, high school, or college. When you wear number 23 in a basketball jersey, that says, okay, he has game. And to wear the number 1 jersey, that means all eyes on that particular player right there, and you better produce.
I used to help with the youth basketball league 15 years ago, and we didn't even print number 23 jerseys because we just weren't going to have the conversation every single year with kids about wearing that number and having kids fight over it. So we took it off the table.
Yeah, I used to have a pretty strong opinion, like 44 for Hank Aaron, retired in Major League Baseball. And Reggie Jackson wore it, a couple of Hall of Famers, but it's retired because of Hank Aaron.
Right.
And I felt like, hey, there are certain numbers that you just don't wear. And I kind of changed my opinion on it a little bit. I played in a fast pitch softball league. It was a Latin league, and everybody wanted to wear 21 for Clemente. Everybody. It was not a sacred thing. It was hey, we want to honor him by wearing a thing. So I kind of evolved a little bit on it where there's certain untouchable numbers. The Steelers are an interesting organization.
Very true.
All the great players that they had, number 70 for Ernie Stautner, which is before most people's times. He retired before I was born, but I've read up on him.
Right.
Mean Joe 75, and that was it until a couple of years ago, and unfortunately Franco passed before he got to see his number retired. And
But think about
are there
all the
guys?
other incredible Steelers players that are household names that we talk about all the time. Just Jack Lambert. I mean, so many of them and they don't have their numbers retired. Super Bowl
Right.
MVPs, 3.
Yeah, I mean Lambert, Jack Ham, Mel Blount, Troy Polamalu.
So
But
many.
you start to get into it, from a football standpoint, all of a sudden, if you retire 20 or 30 numbers, so I kind of get where they're going.
Yes.
There are guys I would like to see, especially before they pass, if they broke down and did Franco. I would love to see Mel Blount's number
Yeah.
retired. The Mel Blount rule, I think his contribution to football is
Huge.
maybe not as well known as Mean Joe, who turned the franchise around, or Franco with the immaculate reception, but Mel Blount really deserves it. I've lobbied before for Terry Bradshaw. I'm starting to think that skipping Art Rooney's funeral is going to keep that from happening.
I agree.
And I know they would never say it publicly.
I know.
But Bradshaw has stayed away from Pittsburgh for a long time. Even when he mended fences, he still doesn't come back very often. I really wonder if, and I don't think Dan would necessarily have held it against him, because Dan Rooney just wasn't going to retire another number.
Right.
I do think Art Rooney, maybe in the back of his mind, or maybe the family is like, no on Bradshaw. And if you retire Bradshaw, at some point you got to retire Ben, and then
Right.
that gets to be a really interesting discussion.
Yep. Yeah,
Well,
it does. And I think Ben Terry Bradshaw is his own worst enemy. Do you know what I mean? And I hated for him. I mean, he was like my hero. You know what I mean? I loved him when I was a really little kid, and so I hate that he's painted himself into this corner, because the majority of Steeler fans don't harbor ill will towards him. Do you know what I mean? And they love him, they care about him, they talk about him, they say mostly good things about him. And so the fact that he doesn't, if you don't want to give that back to the organization in some way, whatever, but he won't give it back to the city either, and the people that support him and watch his show and read his books and go to the country music concert he does and whatever else. I mean, I think he owes the fans a little something, frankly.
In Pittsburgh, yes.
That's what I mean.
He's such a national figure at this point. I mean,
He
he's
is.
been broadcasting for 3 times longer than he's a
Yeah.
player. Not that, if you ever watch social media after the, NFL on Fox, there are 35 million voices out there saying, "Oh, get Bradshaw off the air."
Yeah, they hate him.
Yeah. Well, to me, he's the grumpy old man. So just, Uncle Buck, just basically, So,
He's always been his own worst enemy. I mean, that was his issue when he was a player. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
He couldn't get out of his own way, couldn't get out of his own head. He made everything harder than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And he struggled with mental illness. He's been
Yes.
very upfront about it.
Yes.
I mean, he's he talked about very openly why he didn't go to Art's funeral. He said he just, he just avoids funerals. And, should he have gone? Yes, I think he should have. With that kind of relationship that they had, yeah, absolutely. But, at least he's consistent about it. He didn't go to Dan Rooney's funeral either. It all stems from that Chuck Noll wouldn't pat him on the back and give him a hug, and Noll just wasn't that guy.
Wasn't that guy?
I mean, would Bradshaw have turned into the player he did if Noll hadn't put him through? You could put a quarterback through it back in the 70s. You can't do it now because they'll change their social media and demand a trade.
Right. Well, like I said, I mean, now the players hold the trump cards now. I mean, now you look at that Caleb Williams, for example. He and his father are negotiating with networks to say, okay, we want to get paid for every time you show a picture of me on TV, doing something. And on top of that, you got somebody that don't want to go to Chicago, and okay, with the conversation with Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders,
Yeah.
Don't want my son to go to a certain to New York, whatever, because of the situation. Eli Manning did that, John Elway did it also. So, I mean, it's
What was it? Lamar Ball, the dad, kind of started all this. I honestly didn't
Yeah.
think anybody could get more out there. LeVar Ball. I,
Yeah.
I didn't think anybody could get more out there than him. And I give him a ton of credit. I mean, he's got his kids playing in the NBA. He did it his
Yeah.
way. I mean, I didn't. Caleb Williams' dad has just, I don't get it. I mean, you thought you were going to get a piece of ownership. There's a rookie salary cap. I mean, what did
Yeah.
if you got if he's a millionaire, billionaire, and I don't know about it, but I mean, maybe he is.
He is.
If he wants to buy a piece of the team, fine. What, gifted a piece of Tom Brady wasn't
The
allowed
kid
to get
is
that.
really smart, and I don't know enough about him to know how much of it is his dad and how much of it is him. Do you know what I mean? But I'm going to go with him because he's technically a grown man, and so he's making choices on his own, and he has made himself a millionaire between the college money that he gets paid, and the endorsements and things like that, plus what he's chosen to do with that money. He's been very smart. I think he's a savvy guy, like a lot of other young athletes that are, we're seeing emerge now, that these savvy businessmen, and I think he's got a mind for that, a head for that. He's got his dad backing him up, and so I think he's going to be somebody that's going to shoot for the moon. And you're going to, what's the worst you can say is no. Do you know what I mean? But I think he's going to try. He's going to be somebody that pushes the envelope, and I think we'll see this for as long as he plays in the NFL. He will be that guy that wants the newest kind of contract and the newest way to own part of the team, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? That he and his dad dream up. They're obviously much smarter than I am, to come up with. I think he will be the one we will see constantly pushing the envelope because he believes he's worth it.
But the thing is, you can't go overboard and think, okay,
No,
the world is yours, and because we've seen instances where parents have stepped in and try to be in control, and they screwed a whole
Lamar's mom, Lamar Jackson's mom.
Well, that was a gamble, but he won.
He won.
Yeah.
Sort of.
But he won his money. He won. Could he got more? No. He could have no.
Took a lot. I don't know that he could have got more money, but he sure took a lot of unnecessary heat.
He did.
Jackson is a guy.
In the process, yes. In the process, I understand that part.
Yeah.
But in the end, he got he got the bag. So.
Well, I mean, he knew they were going to pay him. I mean, you're basically just a hold, you know what I mean, a holdout at that point. He knows they're going to pay him. He knows they're not going to let him go. Do you know what I mean? So who can be, more stubborn and and what do you lose along the way in respect from your teammates and things like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally, Caleb Williams, this whole thing about, they're pushing the envelope. Look, Patrick Mahomes is off to probably the best start of a quarterback outside of Dan Marino that I've ever seen. And it's obviously he's won a championship, so he's definitely better than Dan Marino. And, I watched the tape on Caleb Williams and I just don't get it. I mean, he makes some phenomenal plays. I mean, he is electric. Yeah, but he misses a lot of routine throws. Yeah. And, I've seen 2 different books on him. I mean, and let's face it, you're going to Chicago. Not exactly, they haven't developed a quarterback ever.
Yeah, ever.
They're an original 16. They don't, it's not quarterbacks go there to die. People laughed at Justin Fields for the "we should get a dome in Chicago" comments. But if Soldier Field conditions outside of Buffalo, I mean, that's pretty bad. It's not bad. Called the Windy City because they play the trumpet.
Yeah. It's interesting about Caleb Williams. I said this, I know a lot of people are like so high on him, and I'm not trying to knock him, but I feel this way about anybody that you're drafting, it's an unproven player. There is nobody, almost hardly ever, that's coming straight out of college that I'm like, this guy is going to be the one. You know what I mean? There's always that little bit of like, maybe, because we've seen players who are supposed to light the world on fire and they fail. You know, I'm not going to call them a bust, but they struggle, or they don't develop the way we thought they would, or, you know, they flat out fail. I mean, Tim Tebow.
Think about this. Think about this.
I think he's better than Tebow, though.
He is
Chicago
better
has-
than Tebow, but still, I mean, remember all the hype that surrounded him?
Think
Yeah,
about this.
absolutely.
Chicago has to go against Detroit, who went to the NFC Championship
Yeah.
twice. You have to go against Green Bay,
Minnesota.
Jordan Love. Well, the jury's
We don't
out
know
on
what they're doing
Minnesota because 2 Chainz, he's down in Atlanta right now. So
Right.
we'll see.
That's where your guy might be going, Ray, the guy you like, JJ McCarthy. You're hearing a lot of buzz about that. They're
Yeah.
doing everything they can to try to get him.
Yeah.
Yes. Guys, great show. Great episode.
It's a good one today. Lots to talk
Oh,
about,
yeah.
despite
Another one
nothing
of the
going
books.
on.
Another one of the books. And again, we are in the works of putting something together, getting ready for the draft.
Yep.
So that's coming soon. And before I close things out, Bob, what should you do?
Like, share, subscribe.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, share, and subscribe. And please email us if you have any thoughts you want to share, information you want to give, ideas or suggestions or comments. We'd love to hear them. Questions.
Yes. And our email
Absolutely.
address is sixsteelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's SIXSTEELCITYRINGS@yahoo.com. Look at the bottom of the screen. Guys, once again, thank you very much. Leanne, Bob, get ready for next week.
Thank you, Ray.
See you next week.
See
Take
you
care.
next week.
Bye.